Let's play. What is this one now? This is what is going on with this dude? I mean, I just like I don't understand people who think they can not know what they're talking about and say it with such assuredness. Like, particularly when you're going through this much scrutiny, right? I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. But, I mean, this guy is knee deep, it seems to me, online. Jason Johnson. Because he's been arguing, the big thing he's been arguing is that Bernie Sanders and Michael Bloomberg are both oligarchs. Well, or that we shouldn't say oligarchs, and that Bernie Sanders is an oligarch. Like, it's like, surely.
Yeah, we shouldn't
in academic settings.
Yeah, we shouldn't say Bloomberg is an oligarch, and also oligarchs include Bernie Sanders.
And millionaires and billionaires are the same.
Yeah.
But the problem is the system. Therefore, Bloomberg is fine. Yeah.
It's very strange. He doesn't, like, you shouldn't demonize anybody. Well, it's like, how about he just stop using his money to change the course of human history? Like, if you have, like, Bernie Sanders does not have enough money. Like, just like the Gates Foundation is just a perfect example of it. Like, you know, like 20 years dominated in education thought by an experiment they did that they announced was a complete failure.
Yes.
Now, of course, it wasn't announced that it was a complete failure. The same sort of trumpets that and nobody's invested $750 million into their Rand report that said, we should probably just do what educators have been saying all along.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that just went, like, no one paid attention to that.
Also, Bernie Sanders' couple of million comes from people buying his book because they like the way he wants to change the world.
Well, yeah, but I don't think it's really ultimately a function of how you make your money. I think that's a separate problem. Like, I think, like, yes, you exploit people, you appropriate their wealth in some way. That's bad, and that's a separate problem. But when you use your money, your $1 billion, when you have so much that the laws of the country really do not pertain to you in the same way, that the laws of physics do not pertain to you in the same way. I'm not talking literally physics, but like the physics of the country don't, your whole life is radically different in a way that I don't think that we can imagine. I mean, I've told this story before that I had a buddy who worked for a billionaire, was one of his like lieutenants, did it for a year or two. And he sat me down and goes, look, I know you think it's effed up and how bad it is. It's 10 times worse. It's 10 times worse. They don't go through customs.
Oh yeah.
They don't, if they have a problem with like something that's coming out of the University of Michigan, pick up the phone, call the president, taken care of. Like,
I don't think
policy.
Yeah. People, I think people just like people can't mathematically comprehend how much billion is. I don't think that they understand on a day-to-day level, like just how different their reality is.
There's not a teacher anywhere in the country whose lives are in some way not affected by
the fact that
Bill Gates
decided,
pumped in almost $1 billion into education, an education experiment. But here is that same guy just dropping the ball on what is like, I don't know, what's the most well-known fact about Bernie Sanders' campaign, right? Like, if you would ask the average person, it would be something like, he's raised a lot of money from a lot of donors, $27, they would still probably say, or something average. That's like the most well-known fact.
Rest of this Democratic field.
Right, and that's right, Jason. When we look at what's happening now in the money run, it seems that the only two people who will really be competitive, besides Mike Bloomberg, because we already know he already is, going into Super Tuesday will be Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders. They'll both probably have anywhere from $25 to $50 million on hand. Right. Where do you suggest, especially Pete Buttigieg, who's going to come out probably weaker in South Carolina and Nevada than he does now, where does he spend that money in Super Tuesday?
If he's smart, he needs to spend a lot of money in California. California is going to be the big prize. California is going to be the state where Tom Steyer is spending a lot of money, Mike Bloomberg is spending a lot of money, and Mayor Pete can't afford to end up 4th or 5th or 6th place in California right now. That is where I will be marshaling my forces. But again, I sort of said that before. I've sort of said this before. If this race comes down to money, and if it comes down to a Bernie Sanders versus Mayor Pete, this is not much of a competition. Bernie Sanders will lap the field with Mayor Pete. The real question is going to be how much of the money that these campaigns are raising is actually going to translate into votes. If you look at Elizabeth Warren, she has the largest number of donors, but she's not raising as much as Bernie Sanders. We're going to see a very interesting, and Mayor Pete has always been very good at raising money.
That's just right.
That's like low-hanging fruit. Like he's got 5 times more donors than anybody.
Like remember that New York Times map where they had to turn off Sanders so that you could see the other candidates?
Right. He was just completely overwhelmed. I think he's got how many individual donors does he have now? Is it 4 or 5 million?
But and that's like it was just stated so confidently.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he misspoke, but that's a weird. I mean, he's making a point based upon that, so it would be hard to misspeak in that way. I mean, I think she has had I think she has hit over 1 million individual donors as opposed to donations, but I think he's a multiple of that. But wow, like that's part of the problem. Like it's okay for people to be making those mistakes.
Yeah.
But there's nobody in the building.
No one in the building was like, "Hey, that was wrong."
There's no producer in the host ear. There's nobody.
Yeah. Sanders' donor base is getting big too.
Oh, I guess it's 1.4 million.
That's over the course of 2019.
Oh, they're just over the course of 2019. So he had finished it at 1.4 and she's got 890,000.
Yeah. No, right. She
has a lot,
a
but
very clear second place.
He has 600,000. He almost doubles her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she has a lot.
I think that someone would correct him.
But there's nobody in the building. That's the problem.
You got to get to MSNBC tonight, man.
There's nobody in the. It's stunning.